Okay. Hello, everyone. We are going to get started. Um, Thank you all for being here to our event on labor solidarity with Palestine, especially lessons from Italy and Britain. My name is Brandon Mencia. I am the regional director for UAW Region 9A. That represents 50,000 members in the northeastern United States and also Puerto Rico. I make up part of the UAW International, which is a million members in the United States, Puerto Rico, and Canada. Before we begin, I just want to reiterate to everyone, you may know this already, but we do have live interpretation happening right now. So we do have Zoom features for that. Right now, you're going to see that pop up. Here are some guides to how to go about that. You need translation to English. Make sure that you are listening in English. If you don't see the either closed captioning or the live translation button automatically on your toolbar, please make sure to hit more. There's like three little dots on it's one of your tabs. It'll come up there in that little menu. You'll be able to click on it there and be able to set your translation interpretation preferences there. Okay, so as we all adjust to that, I want to begin by first off welcoming everyone on behalf of the National Labor Network for a Ceasefire, made up of 11 national unions and hundreds of local and regional union bodies committed to building peace and justice for the people of Palestine and worldwide. Please look at laborforpeace.org for more information. This webinar is co-sponsored also by In These Times magazine, and we thank them for helping to publicize and report on this event and for their ongoing reporting on key labor issues, but also issues of war and peace worldwide and social and their social advocacy through their work. This webinar is going to be and is already recorded and will later be posted on the NLNC website. We're gathered here today because there's so many vicious attacks on working people and oppressed people worldwide, and countries around the world um, are being targeted by specifically the Trump administration and their global allies. There's an assault on the Palestinian people that continues despite a rhetorical ceasefire by Israel, and that continues with concrete political material support by the United States government. And now, by extension, we see a war on Iran, which continues this unchecked aggression. Labor has a role. We know that war hurts working people. And not only does it kill and destroy the livelihoods of people in the targeted countries, but in our country, in the United States, it's diverting funds from people's needs in order to help military contractors profiteer instead of funding our social safety net and so many other programs, services, and rights that we deserve to have in our country, let alone needing to stop the aggression and bloodshed worldwide. So I'm pleased to have a great panel here tonight, to talk about the experiences in Italy and Britain in terms of organizing concrete action by labor unions in support of justice for the Palestinian people and what lessons we can learn that can help us build a stronger movement in the United States. We've been amazed to see the solidarity that has grown in the United States, especially within the ranks of the labor movement, from the rank and file to many of the leaders who are now speaking out for the first time in a long time, if not ever, in within our unions about the genocide in Gaza. But we need to see more, and we need to learn from examples from the labor movement and trade unions worldwide. So we'll also hear about an action campaign already underway in the United States right now that everyone on this call and beyond and in our unions can help build. And I think one of our speakers will be talking about an action package on the Block the Bombs legislation that has been introduced. This will be a 90-minute webinar. The structure of this will be that we'll hear from each panelist during the first hour. I will introduce them as they come up to speak. And then we'll do Q&A based on questions that everyone on this webinar can submit via the Q&A function. If you've been on many webinars since 2020, you know where to find that button. But if not, again, look down on your toolbar or hit more to find the Q&A button for you to submit your questions. So I'll move on now to our first speaker for today. Our first panelist is Salvatore Mara, the International Secretary of the CGIL, which is the Italian General Confederation of Labor. This is the largest labor federation in all of Italy. He also represents CGIL in the executive bodies of the International and European Trade Union Confederations, ITUC, and ETUC. So with that, please, Salvatore.
Thank you, Brandon. I'm really excited of being with you tonight. Greetings from Rome. It's really a honor and a pleasure for me being with you tonight. And thank you, Labor for Ceasefire comrades, for inviting me to speak tonight at this webinar. Well, Brandon, you already explained in your introduction why an international-led trade union movement would be organizing a strike in solidarity with Palestine. In your introduction, you already said a lot about the reasons why we should all be united in solidarity in these very difficult circumstances we're all going through. But I will add a few reflections upon also the questions that you sent to me in preparation of this webinar. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm the International Secretary of the CGIL. You said it's the Italian largest confederation with about 5 million members around the country. We organize in the public and private sectors, as well as people who are retirees. And we are also members of the European Trade Union Confederation. And together with you all, the IFL-CIO brothers and sisters, we are united fighting in the International Trade Union Confederation. Um, I will start by saying something about what led us to join the movement and organize a general strike on October 3rd last year, which was, if you want, the momentum of our mobilization in solidarity with Gaza and Palestine. First of all, this is not something that happened all of a sudden. This is a fruit of a long-standing work, years and years. It's true, as we all say, October the 7th was a turning point in terms of the aggression of Israel against Palestine and Gaza, but the oppression of Palestinians did not start on that day. So you can imagine that CGIL has been along the decades in solidarity with Palestinian people, and we've been fighting for several decades together with other unions and the movement in solidarity with the people of population and workers of Palestine. And when I say workers, I particularly refer to a very privileged and close relationship with the brothers and sisters of the Palestinian General Federation of Trade Unions, PGFTU, which is our sister union in the country, in Palestine. Then we also have several Palestinian unionists who play a key role in our union. They're originally from Palestine, and they bring their culture, their of course, knowledge and also their activism in the union. And so the relationship with the Palestinian diaspora in Italy is also important and vital. And then, of course, there's a third pillar, which is the ongoing and long-standing relation with movements, NGOs, civil society. Maria Elena, sharing the panel with me today, will talk on behalf of the global movement to Gaza, but CGIL has, along the decades, had a long-standing relation with lots of NGOs and civil society. So October 7th happened, and this was the beginning of what we have been calling the most horrible atrocity after War II. The position of CGIL since the beginning has been very clear. We have been condemning Israel for the atrocities, as well as Hamas for the atrocities that they have committed on October the 7th. The escalation of the attacks and the genocide that started after October the 7th has been immediately condemned by CGIL, but unfortunately not by all union in the European Union and around the globe. So this is something that I want to say very clearly. There was not an immediate condemnation by all unions around the globe for the atrocities that have been happening in Palestine and in particular in Gaza. A debate started in the European trade union movement and the international trade union movement about possible action to carry together. The views around what to do were not unanimous, I have to tell you. Different unions were not aligning with the position that CGIL expressed since the beginning. So we decided to start our own campaign and keeping the fight inside the European and international trade union movement. Our decision was to immediately start a campaign for funds in solidarity with the people in Gaza. This campaign is still active, and we're carrying out, together with international humanitarian aid NGOs, still today, active solidarity in the Strip of Gaza and in the occupied territories of Palestine, in solidarity with the workers and the people who are still suffering the atrocities of the attacks of Israel against Palestine. Then we've been immediately organizing demonstrations in Rome and in elsewhere in the cities in solidarity with the people of Palestine as the conflict unfortunately unfolded and aggravated the situation of a humanitarian catastrophe that was happening in Gaza. But I have to pay tribute to the Global Sumud Flotilla and the flotillas because they really made the difference in terms of triggering an action. But I'm sure that Maria Elena will talk about it later and will explain in detail how relevant, important, and key they were in even activating and waking up somehow the Italian trade union movement, which was divided, I have to admit, because the autonomous unions and CGIL shared concerns, demands, and platforms. The other Italian confederations didn't. Our general secretary took the floor during a European Trade Union executive committee and requested that at least the European unions would call for a symbolic 1 hour strike all across Europe in solidarity with Gaza. This was unfortunately not accepted. And we decided to, along with the solidarity with the flotilla, organize a general strike. I was myself in Tunis when the first drone attacked the first boat in Tunis. That was I was there together with the brothers and sisters of the flotilla, and immediately we sent a press release saying that if the flotilla people were attacked, we would act as land crew in solidarity and not only call for demonstrations in the street, but for a general strikes of all workers, which we declared immediately on October 3rd, the day after our flotilla comrades, brothers and sisters were attacked. And as a land crew, we decided to act in solidarity with them. There was, I think, the most visible and impressive act of solidarity. We were together with Maria Elena in Rome, where the people and the streets of Rome were flooded with people. About 2 million people around Italy decided to participate in these demonstrations happening and strike happening on October the 3rd and also on October the 4th, with a huge demonstration happening in Rome. Our demands were very clear. Our demand was, first of all, a ceasefire, an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Secondly, we wanted immediate humanitarian aid to be delivered to the people suffering in Gaza. The third one was to ask the Italian government to stop immediately sending weapons to the government of Israel, which was committing a genocide in Gaza. Unfortunately, not only we were not heard, but we were violently attacked by the Italian far-right government, and our strike was declared illegal. We're still suffering the legal consequences of the Minister of Transportation legal suing us and bringing us to court for having called for the strike. But we already won one case in the courts, and Mr. Salvini, the Minister of Transportation, has been condemned for illegally attacking the strike and overruling the strike regulation in the country. I'll finish because I understand that my time is coming to an end by saying that the fight is not over. We have to continue our fight. So, what's next? We have to keep the solidarity. We have achieved something very important, something unique as labor trade union movement. Palestine has been recognized in the International Labor Organization as a state. And for the first time in June, in the United Nations agency, the ILO, the Palestinian state will be able, and I repeat it, the Palestinian state, which has been recognized as a state, will be able to uh, sent a tripartite delegation to the International Labour Conference happening in Geneva at the beginning of June. But we have to keep the campaign. We have hosted Marwan Barghouti's wife in CGIL to join the Freedom Now campaign to free all political prisoners in Palestine, which are suffering in the jails in inhumane conditions. We are joining the people of the Mothers for Peace on March 24th in Rome and march with Israeli and Palestinian mothers who are going to march from the city center to the Vatican in Rome in a show of united solidarity. We will keep fostering dialogue between the PGFTU and the Israeli Union, and we will keep fighting in the ILO for, of course, recognition of Palestinian workers' rights. Lastly, and here I will conclude, we will, of course, support the global Sumud flotilla and the flotillas that are going to leave soon from Italy and elsewhere in their global message for solidarity. Thank you for inviting me, and I hope that my contribution was useful for the debate we're having today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Salvatore. As he signaled, we have our next speaker, Maria Elena Delia. I will say before I introduce that Maria Elena is going to speak in Italian. So
Oh, no,
please,
no, no,
no? Oh,
I'm
you're not?
sorry, I can speak in English.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
great. Terrific. You're going to be speaking in
yeah,
English. Disregard what I was going to say, which I never said in the first place about the
yeah. Okay.
interpretation setting. But Marielena Delia was born in Turin, Italy, holds a degree in physics, and has dedicated her life to two main passions, teaching and the defense of human rights. She has worked for justice for Palestinians for many years and currently serves on the international steering committees of both the Global Movement to Gaza, GMTG, and the Global Sumud Flotilla, GSF. She is the GSF spokesperson for Italy. So with that, I pass it on to the speaker.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much to all of you for having me. And it's really a honor and a pleasure. And I also thank Salvatore because in his speech, he already gave a very, very clear picture of what we have been, living together in the last month and even before. Of course, I will speak from another perspective. I explain very briefly who I am. I am mainly an activist. I've been an activist for many, many years. And for many, many years, I've been um, working as an activist in big international movements. So I started with in 2003 with Vittorio Rigoni and the global and the International Solidarity Movement and the Free Gaza movement and the very, very first flotilla, because we have to understand that we didn't make up something with our Global Smooth Flotilla, because the first flotilla was born in 2008, because we have also to remember that Gaza has not been under siege since the 8th of October 2023, but Gaza is under siege since 2007. So the narrative trying to tell us that what's going on in Gaza and in Palestine is the result of what happened on the 7th of October is a misleading narrative. So, what I'm saying is that there is a long story uh, behind us, a long story of activism that helped us to do what we did last year. In the questions that you sent me to, trying to build the speech, the first question was how was the Global Summit Flotilla built? And this is a very tricky answer to give, because sometimes even myself, even I find myself very surprised about how we could in 2 months create and develop a giant, a monumental project, a monumental mission, because in 2 months we were able to, put in the sea almost 45 boats leaving from Italy and Spain and Tunis and then Greece. And so the question is, how we did it, but not from a logistical point of view, from a political and human point of view, because what happened, how could we do that, and how could we trigger, as Salvatore said before me, what then happened in Italy. Basically, my analysis is that Palestine helped us, unfortunately, because for people like me who have been an activist for Palestine for many, many years, that reaction was a surprise, because we have been feeling for many, many years very isolated and, kind of alone in the scenario, in the political scenario. But after 2 years of genocide, 2 years of genocide in front of everybody's eyes, 2 years of genocide in the complete indifference of the institutions, European Union, our government, as Salvatore said before me, something happened, because the conscience of people had really a click in some way. And what happened was that they saw us, normal people, the people, okay, the civil society, doing something that was unthinkable. So taking our bodies, taking our time, taking our energies, taking a risk, and just saying, no, that's enough. That's really enough. And that was simple as that. I mean, I would like to, telling you more sophisticated, and there were more sophisticated steps taken, but basically there was a very particular historical moment, and what we did was really a trigger. But that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough, because if before that people like us, the NGOs, associations, labor union, if there weren't a previous work, very, patient work, very long-term work done before what then happened last fall in Italy, probably nothing of what we witnessed would have, happened. And then there was something else. There was a real strong and really special team working. People on the ground have been working so hard, trying to give us on the boats voice, to put the light on us, but on us as tools, because we were not the key people. We were just tools to put those lights on Gaza, on Palestine. And I would, just for this reason, also share with you something that Georgina Levi, who is, sorry, one of the comrades has been working a lot to build the ground mobilization, wrote for this for this meeting. So what she wrote, just give me a sec, is that that what I'm just looking for her. Just give me a sec, and I am with you. Okay. So it's very important to me to share also her voice. So she says, what happened was not the result of a one moment decision, nor the product of one single organization work, but it was a gradual process made of very little steps, often not so seeable. Since the half of August and for all the month of September in Rome, we organized a lot of small and medium event of sharing, of of confronting. And so starting from Rome, but also in other parts of Italy, we built a kind of a map, a kind of a geography, okay, made of a lot of territorial hubs. So this geography, this map, with Rome in the very center, was the core of what happened late in time, because there was a preparation, the preparation like of a peaceful army. Each town, each very small village was involved, was committed, and when we sailed and when we were attacked, because I remember that our boats were attacked in front of Crete, so in international water with military drones. And at that time, like in a very spontaneous and natural way, all these people did what they prepared to do in the previous weeks. So it was not a total surprise. It was a very patient, step by step, organized process that people like Georgina in Rome, but not also in not only in Rome, have been doing for many many weeks, trying also to build alliances with the unions, with the CGL, with USB. I mean, the 3rd of October big strike that was, I mean, historical, was not built in a day, like Salvatore said before me. So what I'm trying to share with you is that um, someone in a demonstration had a sign saying, "We thought to save Palestine, but Palestine is saving us." And in a very strange way, is a kind of a truth, because uh, this genocide, we had to face this very, very dark page of history to see finally the conscience of people, of the civil society moving, you know, um, deciding to, to sacrifice something of their lives to, put this something of their life in common with other and working for justice. Um, the real problem, the real
Mariana,
challenge.
if you could wrap up in the next minute,
Yeah,
we need to
I
hear from
wrap.
our speakers. Thank you.
I just want to tell you something, that the real challenge arrived after the mission, because when we came back, uh, we knew that, the attention on Palestine, on us and on Palestine would have, decreased, would have been decreased. And so this is when we have to, to keep our networks very, very tight, because the real challenge arrives now, in my opinion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I am going to move the order of our speakers a little bit. We will hear from our guests from Great Britain in a bit, but I do want to just accommodate for someone who may have to leave earlier. Our next speaker will be Lara Kiswani, who is from Beit Iksa in Akir, Palestine, and was born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. Lara is the executive director of the Arab Resource and Organizing Center, which serves thousands of poor and working class Arabs and Muslims, building campaigns and coalitions advancing Palestinian liberation while also strengthening broader struggles for racial, social, and economic justice. And before I pass it, I do want to remind people that we do have a live Q&A going. We will collect those questions and have a Q&A portion after our final speaker. So please submit your questions through that feature. So Lara, please.
Thank you so much. It's truly an honor to be amongst comrades. Appreciate all the comments that came before me. Um, I want to start by just naming that we continue to live through unprecedented moment in U.S. and global history. And this right-wing authoritarian that is on the rise is a direct response to the gains, right, won by our social and labor movements, including those that have been named a few minutes ago. And it's an agenda advancing the interests of an extreme minority that cannot sustain a real popular mandate. So, of course, they rely on violence and warfare and repression that we are seeing now spread across our towns, our cities, and our countries. And for us as Palestinians, these last 2.5 years have been absolutely devastating. Our people have suffered beyond measure. There's not a single Palestinian anywhere who's not lost family in this genocide or doesn't intimately know somebody who has. And Gaza, as was noted by my comrades earlier, will never be the same, but also neither will the world, right? Gaza has changed the world in so many ways. It has stripped bare the US and Western partnership with Israel and ignited an unprecedented global resistance, which we are proud, all of us, to be a part of. We have, in fact, built the largest movement for Palestinian freedom in history. That movement includes the largest organized labor force in the United States in solidarity with Palestine, the National Labor Network for Ceasefire. And we salute this network and all the unions behind it. This isn't only historic for the Palestinian movement, it's also a major victory for the anti-war movement globally. It may, in fact, be the most significant anti-war statement made by organized labor in modern US history. So these are shifts that we have actually been waiting for, but more importantly, we've been organizing towards, right? We've built a movement rooted in the understanding that abolishing apartheid and fascism in Palestine is inseparable from the international fight for economic and political democracy for all people. But even as history is on our side and the levers of political power clearly are not, which is why we have to rely on one another in solidarity actions between community and labor. We have to stay organized and coordinated. And I run an organization that builds power amongst working class people. Many in our base are union members and many are not. So we see clearly the power that unions and unionization holds. And if our struggle is going to result in our ability to actually build political power, then from our perspective, trade unionists and the leadership of the labor movement as a whole is essential in this fight. So I'll start by, I want to give a story of what's possible here in the United States and just name that you all have joined, everybody on this call, all the unions that have taken action in the last 2.5 years, including the last decades, have really joined the majority of workers around the world in demanding an end to U.S. aid to Israel, right? A robust labor movement actually helps more people understand that a healthy society is one invested in human dignity and self-determination, not war, exploitation, and occupation. And the arms industry is making billions of dollars as we speak from weapons sold and used in these wars, including in Gaza. So along with the being the largest recipient of U.S. military aid, Israel is also one of the world's leading weapons exporters. And the arms used against working people in this country and around the world are often tested on my people in Gaza. Long before October 7th, 2023, we knew Gaza as a testing ground for surveillance and weapons technology. And as many have come to understand, the bombs being dropped on Gaza and the revenue sustained through that flow through our ports. That is why we had launched Block the Boat. Here in the United States, in the belly of the beast, we often feel a sense of paralysis when it comes to identifying real mechanisms to make a material impact in the struggle against militarism and war. But this example offers us some lessons for today. We helped lead an international campaign to stop Zim, Israel's largest shipping company, from docking up ports around the world, which has evolved into a campaign against many forms of global Israeli shipping. In 2014, when there was another war on Gaza by the State of Israel, in response to those atrocities, the Palestinian General Federation of Trade Unions, PGFTU, which was named earlier, and a broad coalition of Palestinian labor unions called on people across the world and workers across the world to boycott Israel and all businesses complicit with the apartheid regime. They specifically urged workers to refuse to handle Israeli goods and support union members in refusing to build Israeli weapons. That renewed call for solidarity during the last major assault in Gaza also took place. And in response, AROC, my organization, organized a campaign to prevent Zim from unloading cargo at the port of Oakland, California, where the International Longshore Warehouse Union, ILWU, operates. We reached out to ILW Local 10. We did outreach with rank and file workers. We spoke to the leadership, and we committed to limiting the struggle to the specific gates where Zim was being unloaded and unloaded and docked. ILW honored our community pickets and did not unload the ship for 5 consecutive days that year. The ship returned the coming month. We organized another picket. The following month, another picket. And since then, from then on until 2021, that Zim ship did not attempt to dock at the port of Oakland after having docked weekly for years. Many of those workers identified with the strength and militancy of the Block the Boat picketers, and they celebrated with us when the ship was forced to go back at sea without being unloaded. Watching that struggle unfold led many workers, most of them Black and brown, to follow the news from Gaza and connect more deeply with the Palestinian struggle. The drama of that moment really expanded public support and brought widespread attention to the campaign. So 7 years later, when the apartheid profiteering ship attempted to return to Oakland, we renewed the international call to block the boat. We organized community pickets at the Port of Oakland and called on ILW Local 10 to once again stand on the right side of history and honor those pickets. We also knew that ILW Local 10 had long used its labor power in solidarity with social movements, from the struggle against South Africa to support the movement for Black lives. And we wanted workers across the world to actually support ILW in their sacrifice. So the International Block the Boat campaign sought to build on that history of anti-apartheid movement in South Africa and engage in a global community to disrupt international commerce, global capitalism through boycott, divestment, and sanctions against apartheid Israel. And we succeeded. In June 2021, the Longshore Warehouse Union honored 6 consecutive pickets at the Port of Oakland. Since that organizing, no Zim-operated ship has docked at the Port of Oakland, and no Zim-operated ship has unloaded at one of the largest ports in North America for 11 years and counting. That ship wandered up the coast, and at each stop, it met with resistance, picketers from across local communities. Our international call for Block the Boat was backed by over 100 organizations, including comrade and trade unionists in South Africa, Italy, London, France, and across the US. The campaign reminded us, a really important reminder for today's conversation, that worker and community solidarity can surely disrupt international commerce. It can deepen the divide between corporate elite and working people while also giving us a path not only to pressure decision makers, but to move the masses towards a shared political vision. Today, the Block the Boat campaign has evolved into a BDS campaign against many forms of Israeli shipping. And today, we are now a leader in the Oakland People's Arms Embargo campaign, after discovering that FedEx was using civilian airports across the United States to ship F-35 fighter jet components to Israel during this genocide. These weapons are now being used in Gaza and also on Iran as we speak. Oakland Airport is complicit in this, and we are working with labor and community partners to ensure that we put a stop to this once and for all. We have the support of our mayor and are now working to translate that mass support into material consequence. So as we speak, military equipment and weapon components are being shipped through civilian airports all across the United States on FedEx airplanes. We believe taking up this fight is a concrete way to take a stand against war and stop the flow of weapons that make it possible. The complicity of the US government requires us not only to take up immediate actions, but also what strategic imperatives we have to undertake to build a left in the US powerful enough to expand the capacity of all working people to overcome capitalism and racism and to shape the economic and political priorities of our society. Whether that means taking up legislative fights like the Block the Bombs Act, which I know will be spoken of in a few minutes, or organizing local fights to stop the flow of weapons through airports, we have ways to fight back and throw a wrench in the war machine. And as Palestinians and as a Palestinian movement, we truly believe that just as the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement helped turn the tide against South Africa, international solidarity and organized actions in boycott, divestment form from Israel will help bring about a free Palestine and, most importantly, in turn, offer a roadmap for global justice. And I am honored to be amongst you in this fight and look forward to the damage we will do to the exploitive opposition that we're up against in the coming days.
Thank you so much, Lara. Thank you for your time. And with that, I will introduce returning to Europe for a second and then coming back to the United States, I will introduce Joe Grady now, the General Secretary for the University and College Union in Britain. Um, Joe has been the General Secretary since 2019. She has been a working member of the union as a senior lecturer in employment relations at the University of Sheffield. She grew up in a union household as she was born while her father was a participant in the famous and hard-fought British coal miners' strike in the 1980s. Joe, please.
Thank you. And Brandon, I feel like you're saying Britain, quite British. So just
Really? Oh, well,
yeah,
there you
you're
go.
saying Britain. Anyway, hi
I
everyone,
watch a lot
wherever
of
you are.
TV. I'm joking.
I'm actually in Manchester and I'm really, really happy to be joining you. And I've got quite a lot to say, so I'm just gonna get cracking. So if you don't know anything about UCU, we're the University and College Union. We represent about 120,000 members in the UK, and we teach and do other activities such as research and administrative functions in what's called post-16 education. So education stops being compulsory in the UK at 16, and if you're teaching people over that age, you're probably a UCU member. And we teach in universities, colleges, adult ed, and also in prisons. Um, so, whilst you can't rely on the British state to be a key part of the Palestinian solidarity movement, you can rely on British trade unionists. And the British Labour movement has really been a key part of Palestinian solidarity. Our union, UCU, like the majority of British trade unions, is affiliated to the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. And this is the largest Palestinian solidarity organisation in Europe. And since October 2023, the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign and others have organised some of the largest, most sustained demonstrations in UK history. And trade unions have been incredibly visible presence in these marches. I've spoken at a number of them. We encourage our members via our communications to come and take part. We bring our banners, we bring our family, our friends. And in addition to those sort of on the streets activities, our union in particular, alongside some other British trade unions, we have been participating in regular workplace days of actions where workers organise activities to express their solidarity with the Palestinian people. In case you don't know much about it, we have highly restrictive labour laws in the UK. We have to take part in a postal ballot with lots of kind of laws and timeframes. There are strict notice requirements. There are heavy limits on what we call secondary action that really constrain any large scale industrial action. And they also curtail your ability to politically strike. You can only take strike action on very specific industrial matters to do with your workplace. So whilst we haven't been able to organise industrial action around Gaza and Palestine, such as we've seen in Italy and discussed by one of our panelists tonight, we have had walkouts. We've organised, particularly in education, days of action, silences, encampments, occupations, stalls, wearing badges and Palestinian scarves. And these struggles, have allowed new grassroots groups in the UK, such as Workers for a Free Palestine, to emerge. And they've had particular focus on protesting outside arms factories, such as Israeli owned Elbit Systems. And I'm really, really proud that UCU members have been really key in Workers for a Free Palestine and as part of those demonstrations. In higher education in the UK in particular, our union has been pushing for university pension funds to fully divest from Israeli bonds that are complicit in the occupation and the genocide. And we were actually successful as a union in, we believe, campaigning and pressuring our pension scheme, USS, to sell off roughly 80 million, so I think about $100 million in Israeli bonds and currency. We're also putting pressure on them to go further than that, but we thought that was a really good first start. As an education union, UCU has been speaking out against Israel's deliberate destruction of education and cultural sites in Palestine, a process that you will know is scholasticide. Obviously, scholasticide manifests through three components: targeted killing or detention of education staff and students, physical destruction educational facilities, which obviously we're in oil in Gaza, and the systematic corruption of educational processes. All of these three processes have occurred in Gaza and to a lesser extent, but still very present in the West Bank. We've also supported the demands of the emerging community of the universities in Gaza, who really do represent the largest public universities in Gaza, and for them to be rebuilt, and specifically for them to be rebuilt by, in a Palestinian vision, with the desires and demands of Palestinians and Palestinian workers in mind. We've also hosted speakers in the UK over from the occupied West Bank. We have paid to have academics from Bezate University to come to the UK and to tour, we call them branches in the UK, our universities, and speak about the genocide. It's very clear that part of Israel's strategy is to isolate Palestine and Palestinians from international exchange and solidarity. And us hosting speakers in the UK is important. But I also just wanted to speak very briefly in an effort to break that isolation. We've recently participated in an international delegation, an Education International. It represents over 32 million trade unionists across, I think, 100 trade unions from Italy, from South Africa, from Canada, from a number of different countries. We were due to go to Ramallah. We went to Jordan first. We had an invitation. We were there at the invitation of the General Union of Palestinian Teachers, who you may know do really important organizing training sessions on social emotional learning to help traumatize children and also teachers. It conducts workshops to help empower women teachers. And our union, along with other unions through Education International, have been supporting them. And we were stopped at the border by Israel. We were detained for several hours. We had our passports confiscated. They didn't believe that we were going to Ramallah to actually take part in a graduation ceremony for Palestinian teachers. Their accusation to us was that we were trying to get into Gaza to raise money for teachers in Gaza, which is a really bizarre thing to be an accusation, because that would have been a fine thing to do. But it wasn't actually the reason we were there. But we were detained. And obviously, this was inconvenient for us. But it's part and parcel of the harassment, of the attempts to isolate, the attempts to make Palestinian educators feel as if they are on their own, and to dissuade international guests from attempting to visit. I think in terms of civil liberties in the UK, what we've witnessed in the UK has been a lot less dramatic than the US. We have seen a series of legal, institutional, and political attacks on the Palestinian solidarity movement and on individual activists. These have ranged from smears to sanctions. The main allegations have been around anti-Semitism and support for terrorism. If you've expressed support for, Gaza, I think that's what they were suggesting we were doing when we were trying to access Palestine. And I just wanted to flag something to you all, because you may not be aware, but in the UK, we had the government prescribe a group called Palestine Action recently, and prescribed them as a terrorist organization. And this had a huge impact in the UK, because not only did we have people, as I say, protesting outside weapons factories, and to be fair, engaging in criminal damage, engaging in acts of damage, but Palestine Action was prescribed as a terrorist organization. So people arrested for this criminal damage were no longer just engaging in criminal damage, they were engaging in terrorist activity. We had a whole host of young people that were what we call remand in prison for well over a year, not charged for anything, but being detained under these powers. They went on hunger strike. It's been a huge miscarriage of justice in the UK. And you may have also seen images of mainly, but not singly, elderly people in the UK taking part in mass demonstrations, holding up signs with "I support Palestine Action," in order to draw attention to the idiocy, really, of the actions of the government. I want to linger on this for a moment because a lot of trade unionists took part in this, a lot of our retired members took part in this. And what it meant is in 2025, arrests associated with terrorism in the UK increased by 1,114%. A terrible use of police time. They made over 2,700 arrests associated with terrorism because people were peacefully protesting the banning of this group. We have seen that the High Court in the UK have ruled that that was not legal. They found the prescription of Palestine action was unlawful. The government are appealing this decision, but I don't think they will be successful. What has been a problem in the UK, and it's a problem that we are now as trade unionists fighting. Our trade union, we have an annual meeting of the trade unions in the UK, and we brought a motion last year to say that the trade union movement has to be at the forefront of defending the right to protest in the UK, because right now the Labour government in the UK is seeking to restrict demonstrations in London and the bringing about of criminal charges against the main conference organisers, Palestinian Solidarity Campaign. We have a new law going through Parliament. It's called the Crime and Policing Bill. It's going to place further restrictions on the right to protest. And the worst bit of the bill is it is seeking to introduce something that will ban reoccurring protests. It is seeking to introduce something called cumulative disruption. Cumulative disruption will mean, let's just take London as an example, let's take Westminster as an example. You could have a demonstration on one Saturday about anti-abortion. You could have a demonstration the weekend after about a completely different cause, a demonstration the weekend after on Palestine. The police will be able to say over the several weekends there's been a cumulative disruption. We are now banning protests in that geographical location. So trade unions have to be on the forefront of this. And I'll finish by saying this because I know we've got more speakers. This is about Palestine, and obviously that's incredibly important to us. But if we allow these restrictions on our ability to defend democracy, on our ability, to simply protest, we have an encroaching far right movement in Europe. We have it in the UK. This will not end at our civil liberties and other causes. This will end at our picket lines. When you criminalize dissent, when you hand sweeping powers to the police, when you silence critics in the name of public order, no one is safe. So we're really clear in UCU, they come for our picket lines, they come for our right to strike, they come for the very freedom our movement was built on. And if they silence Palestinian marches now, they will be silencing us all. So we're doing a lot in UK and the UCU, and I'm really happy to cover it in any questions later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. Very relevant and prescient for all of us in the United States on this call, and especially those who work in universities. Our final speaker, before we go to the Q&A portion, is, last but not least, Puneet Maharaj, who's the Executive Director of National Nurses United. Just looking at the bio, she's executive director of NNU and its largest affiliate, the California Nurses Association, and the National Nurses Organizing Committee, together the largest union and professional association of registered nurses in the U.S. She was born in the state of Punjab in India before her single mother, a farmer, immigrated to the United States. Puneet has met the moment of Trump 2.0, coordinating her organization's fight back as a militant and class-conscious trade union. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Brandon. It's truly an honor to come together with brothers and sisters who have so courageously stood up, organized, struck, and absolutely refused to comply with injustice. And quite frankly, deep, deep gratitude to everyone on this call and to our union allies who have gone out on strike and waged their industrial power to stand up against the genocide in Gaza. At this moment of global crisis, I think we can all agree the energy in the space here is fueling our fight back. NNU is a co-founder of the National Labor Network for Ceasefire, and we've been very proud to fight alongside our NLNC partners these last 2 years to demand not just a ceasefire, but an end to U.S. military aid to Israel, an end to the genocide, and a call for the freedom and self-determination of the Palestinian people. And now NNU nurses are calling for an immediate end to Trump's illegal war on Iran. NNU nurses are clear that we have a duty to help build a labor-led anti-war movement. That clarity is grounded in our principles as a militant, class-conscious union and in the nurses' core values to protect and care for the health of all people. We know nurses and our patients have more in common with the working people in Palestine and Iran than the authoritarians and billionaires who profit from war and imperialism. We know that Israel's destruction of Gaza has decimated the healthcare system and caused a public health catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. More than 1,500 healthcare workers have been killed during the genocide. Not a single fully functional hospital remains in Gaza, with only half functioning partially. And at least 13 hospitals and healthcare workers and healthcare facilities were attacked in Iran in just the first week of the war. Nurses strongly feel that attacking hospitals is a war crime, and we cannot allow that to be normalized. As the World Health Organization has emphasized, the bombing of fuel depots is also creating an environmental and public health disaster. We also know that these illegal wars are deeply connected to the war that the billionaire class and the techno-fascists are waging on the working class here in the US and globally. It's not just that our tax dollars are paying for the bombs being dropped on Gaza and Tehran. That money has been directly plundered from our healthcare system here in the United States. Just to give you an example, Trump and the Republicans cut $1 trillion from Medicaid just last year. It's a system that funds hospitals and keeps patients alive. And they have used that and those cuts to triple immigration and customs enforcement's budgets to surveil and terrorize immigrants here in the United States, many of whom came here fleeing a war at home. Those healthcare cuts are putting hospitals at risk of service cuts or even closure. Our union has identified hundreds of financially vulnerable hospitals in the wake of Trump's cuts. And while they tell us there is no money for healthcare, Pentagon officials have informed Congress they spent $11.3 billion in just the first 6 days of the war on Iran. They are using funds they've stolen from working people to fuel the AI war machine that companies like Palantir, OpenAI, and Anthropic are building. The IDF and the US military are using these AI tools created by these companies to automate the selection of bombing targets. Targets like the elementary school in southern Iran, where more than 175 people were killed, most of them being children. And as Lara mentioned earlier, they are using these technologies actively in Gaza to further use as an experiment on the broader society globally. The tech billionaires behind these companies are also some of the key supporters of Trump's fascist agenda here in the United States. Palantir's founder, Peter Thiel, has said he thinks freedom and democracy are incompatible. And current Palantir CEO Alex Karp has explained that their tools are designed to scare the enemy and sometimes kill them if necessary. And when questioned about Palantir's technology being used by the IDF, CARP's response was that it is mostly used to kill terrorists, and that innocent Palestinian civilians fall under that category because of Hamas. These are people who want to take control of our democracy. In this moment, when tech billionaires are aligning with fascists like Trump, stealing our healthcare dollars to fund war and genocide, funneling money into AI attacks on working class people at home and abroad, truly, we can say that an injury to one is an injury to all. Labor has a responsibility, I think we can all agree, to lead in this moment, to build a powerful anti-war movement globally, and to stop rising fascism across the globe. It truly saddens me to acknowledge this, but it is true that had we prevailed against the oppression and genocide of Palestinian people in Gaza, we would not be living under the thumb of a war-thirsty government today, which is precisely why our solidarity and collective action to fight back against this injustice is so, so important. These are dark times. Nothing can do justice to the lives that have been lost in Palestine and now Iran. But if there's a sliver of hope in this moment, it's that we know public opinion in the US and globally has fundamentally shifted on Israel's actions in Palestine, and the war on Iran is deeply unpopular. Our unions collectively have an opportunity and a responsibility to mobilize working people's grief, anger, and frustration and organize them into a movement against war and fascism, and a movement for a better world, one that prioritizes a healthy society. We've learned a lot today from our European Union siblings about how we can do that. I have learned a lot about how to build the kind of international solidarity and disruptive power needed to put an end to these illegal wars abroad and to defeat the fascist threat we face here at home. NNU has been drawing on these lessons and escalating our efforts. Nurses have been working with community allies like AROC in the California Bay Area to support for the Oakland people's arms embargo, demanding an end to all shipments of military cargo from ports of Oakland to Israel, as Lara mentioned earlier. We're also taking the fight to the techno-fascists and companies like Palantir that have been enabling and profiting from ISIS's occupation of our cities, Israel's occupation and genocide in Gaza, and now the US and Israel's war on Iran. Nurses have successfully fought alongside with our allies to get members of Congress, including US Representative Ro Khanna, to return Palantir donations and commit to not accepting future contributions. We are also currently targeting Senator Susan Collins, who has received more than $105,000 from Palantir executives, and that fight continues to go on. Palantir also makes AI-driven staffing systems that are utilized in our hospitals, and we are actively fighting back against the use of those systems. And in addition to that, we continue to fight for a just movement. And as some folks mentioned earlier, we are actually proud to announce that we are endorsing HR 3565, the Block the Bombs Act legislation that takes the necessary first step of blocking the transfer of major US military weapons to Israel. We demand an end to the US supplied weapons that have led to the mass killings of Palestinian civilians and the grossest violations of international law. And we will not stand for treating bloated military budgets as priorities while gutting healthcare, food assistance, and other necessary domestic programs. I want to invite everyone joining us tonight to write to their member of Congress, if you're here in the United States, asking them to support HR 3565. There should be a link going into the chat right now with a toolkit where you can learn more about the Block the Bombs Act and a link to a letter you can send to your member of Congress. I hope you'll all do that right now and that you'll urge your unions and organizations you may belong to also support the Block the Bombs Act. History has shown us time and time again that fascism has been stopped when the working class people refuse to comply with injustice. I know that together we can continue to build a strong, militant, class-conscious labor movement that fights fiercely for the rights of all working class people around the globe. And as we always say, that when we fight, we win, and we will continue to organize until we beat back this drive for a war-driven economy and a war-driven agenda across the globe until we win a society that prioritizes working class people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Puneet, for that very powerful and pointed contribution. And please, I want to reiterate to folks to please scan that QR code. We will have that link being sent out afterwards. If you weren't able to catch it in time, please share that. I think it's incredibly important to put the pressure on right now in the United States on elected officials, despite what their previous positions were on Israel to block the bombs. So this is an incredibly important moment, and I think that is one action we can take that is relatively easy in order to make some change. I will now go to the Q&A portion. I want to thank all of our speakers once again for their contributions. We had, some very good speakers, and what tends to happen when you have such a powerful panel is that we also get close to time. So I think we're going to have about time for maybe one or two questions. Please, speakers, unmute yourself if you want to answer. You do not all have to answer the question, but they are pretty general. So if you have something to say, please unmute yourself. The first question I have is about continuing to build the solidarity, especially between Italy and workers in the U.S. It would greatly help if there could be a call from unions in Italy and elsewhere to the U.S. To join global actions against war. How do we make that possible? In connection to that question, a second question is there's a lot of talk about a general strike on May Day. I believe you're talking about May Day 2028, but in general, May Day, let's leave that open-ended. How do we arrive at common demands throughout the U.S. And in Europe in this global struggle?
Shall I go first,
Go for it.
Brandon? Maybe there is a question which was directly to me on also the right to strike, and if
Yeah.
there's any no strike clauses in the Italian collective agreements. I can answer straightforward that in Italy, the right to strike is individual and constitutional. So there cannot be any no strike clauses in the collective bargaining agreement. We only have limitations to the so-called essential minimum levels, which the brothers and sisters in the UK know very well. I'm very happy that they have repealed a very bad law on that, actually, that the labor movement scrapped that horrible law by the conservatives. So this was the fruit of international solidarity, by the way. We very much supported our brothers and sisters in the UK in their fight to repeal the law on minimum service levels. How do we build international solidarity? I will be very short on that. There is a wonderful campaign by the International Trade Union Confederation, which is called For Democracy. Stop the billionaire coup and let's take back democracy. The intervention was of Puneet actually described the campaign and the connections between the billionaires and these unfortunately anti-democratic governments around the world which are connecting one another's in an international neo-fascist, far-right coalition, we have to fight them, and we have the power to fight them because we have the power to organize and bring people together. They want us to be divided and scared and alone. They want the people to feel alone and desperate. Unions and NGOs have the extreme power to get people together, to make them understand that there is a joint possibility for action. Together we can win. These people, they want us to feel alone and desperate. So we don't have to let them do that. And lastly, if I may, the CGIL launched an international anti-fascist trade union network with a strong manifesto where we are putting together unions around the globe. Education International is part of it, the TUC is part of it, and many others are part of it. And we're organizing actions, webinars, and also education seminars around the world. So I would, to conclude, say that it's very important that in this very difficult moment, we are united together around these values of anti-fascism and international solidarity, because they would like us to only deal with, local workplace issues when they are defeating us on international issues. So we have to stand together and united in international solidarity and not give up our international fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Salvatore. Anyone else? Okay. I will leave it at that with that question. I think this one could be to Puneet. Maybe you can best answer this. I am a rank and file nurse in the United States in my union. How can a rank and file member get involved from that position in these efforts? Many unions, or some unions, are vocally on the right side, others less so. How can we, as members in different positions in our unions, contribute to this struggle?
Well, if you're an NNU member, I would say that communicate directly with us and we will plug you in. But I mean, I want to lift up what Salvatore at the beginning of his comments was saying earlier, is that not all unions are leading on the anti-war effort. Not all unions are leading on the fight against the genocide in Gaza. And what we can do is best educate our brothers and sisters why the fight abroad is linked directly to their fight here at home, and why the actors that are acting to oppress the people of Palestine and commit the genocide in Gaza are also the same people who have the same agenda here at home. I mean, I pointed out the direct connection there, right? And in terms of particularly in the United States, where Trump is being supported and enabled by these fascists and techno-fascists, as we call it, what we can do is pay attention in our communities. I think the example of, of what Laura talked about, what I talked about, particularly here in Oakland, California, and taking action and paying attention. How is our community, how is our government supporting and enabling Israel's war and genocide in Gaza? How can we stop that? And how can we best take control and organize together as labor and non-labor alike to put an end to the genocide in Gaza?
Can I say something on this? I know I'm not a nurse or a member of that union, but I think this is such an important question about how kind of rank and file grassroots members impact their union. So our union is very democratic. Literally anybody in a branch can take a motion to their branch and pass it as policy, and then that can kind of trickle up the union's democratic structures. For me, as someone who's lucky enough to lead a union, I really, really value when we get really strident positions on issues such as Palestine passed by our members, because it means I have absolute freedom to be really strident about that. So never assume that you can impact the union's policy on something by whatever the mechanism is in your branch to kind of feed up to the national union. And also, if you have contacts or ideas, I would say get in touch with your kind of local committee, offer to join the committee if you don't have someone who maybe is a committee member that speaks to this. I spoke about the speaking tour that we have in UCU, and okay, this is a lecturer, an academic from the University of Beirut who comes and joins us, But your union could be nurses, it could be another type of worker that you facilitate coming to your country from Palestine, if that's possible, and actually have them on a speaking tour, have them advocating and getting people to understand what solidarity means and why it matters. So never take for granted that you can't have a voice in your union or encourage them to do something on this issue or others.
I think connected to this question, there's another really good question. I think there's been a lot of grassroots rank and file mobilization around changing a union's position, statement, policy, etc. But it is also true, right, that as labor unions, trade unions, we represent many different members who don't automatically agree with each other, just like the working class and the citizens of a given country do not agree on every issue, right? So how have you all, as leaders within unions that have taken bold stances, been able to get these messages of solidarity with Palestine and against the war, down to the rank and file, but also to engage in any kind of political education around why this issue matters to the union and beyond?
I'm happy to
Can I
go, but
say a word?
I don't want to keep filling the space. Oh, do you want to go? No?
No, please go, Joe.
Okay. I mean, in the context in the UK, I think it is just worth acknowledging what you said, Brandon, but in opinion, um, the majority of the UK population has been opposed in Gaza. And that doesn't necessarily mean they all have the exact. So it says I've got a level of abhorrence that I think is quite well shared. For us, speaking to and actually have
Unfortunately, it seems like
out.
Joe's feed is cutting in and out. And Salvatore, do you want to maybe take it and then we go back to Joe if we can get a better signal?
Yeah, it's a pity we cannot listen to Joe, but
Yeah, it
I will
sounded
be
like a
very
great
short
point
and say,
developing.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But I will be very short. There is a very concrete point to make when it comes to our race to arms. We are paying for the weapons with our tax, with our wages being cut, with our social services being cut. So we need to tell our members very clearly that workers do not want to pay for the war of the multimillionaires and the billionaires and the weapons industry. Every euro, every dollar that is being cut to social services or public services or our social welfare and being invested in war, we have to refuse this logic. So we have to tell our people to refuse that their money and their tax is being invested in war, and that this is happening at the detriment of social investments. The Italian budget law is a very clear example where the only investments that were raised in the 2025 increased, sorry, that were increased in the 2025 budget law is investment in weapon. There was a decrease of investments in social services, in public health, in public transportation. So I think it's a very straightforward message that we have to get to our members and tell them that they have to refuse that our governments invest in weapons instead of social welfare and public services.
Yes, absolutely. Puneet, you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, the reality is, you're not going to have every single member with you, right? But we know if we do the necessary political education, similar to what, Salvatore is pointing out, that we will have people on our side, when we connect the dots for them, right? And really, once we've done that necessary deep education, which we are all doing, which is how we're able to mobilize, it's really the organizing. Right? It's the organizing on the ground that is necessary for people to understand that something that is happening abroad, they have the power to impact change over that issue when we can take it on here locally, right? And I would say, in addition to the actions we've taken with the ports here, we are, as I said, also taking on a position on the block the bombs legislation. Yes, it's a piece of legislation. Is Trump going to inevitably sign it? We know he won't, but it's an organizing tool. It's a tool to really engage our membership, the broader community in the fight, right? And to continue to bring justice to the issue. We had nearly 1,000 nurses marching in the streets of San Francisco last year, calling on the end to the genocide in Gaza, right? And that's an opportunity for nurses to really engage and be at the forefront to call justice to the fight, and using every opportunity we can to organize workers into the struggle, into the fight. It is critical for us to keep the momentum going.
Thank you. With that, I do think we have to wrap and leave it there. But this was a incredibly fruitful and really moving discussion, and a lot of great lessons learned and provocative questions. And I appreciate all the panelists for participating and bringing your perspectives. And thank you all who submitted your questions. Unfortunately, we could not get to all the questions before the end. I do want to make one last pitch again for action on the Block the Bombs Act. The chat or here sharing screen, that is the bit.ly link. Please take action as an individual, but more importantly, bring this to your colleagues, your coworkers, fellow union members. Bring these to your locals, your councils, whatever body it is that you interact with as a union member. For those who are union members, and if you're not a union member, number one, go join a union, organize your workplace, but also take action, in your country to make sure that we are, changing the politics of this struggle in favor of liberation, peace, and solidarity, and not war, destruction, and genocide. Um, I want to again thank the panelists. I also want to thank once again In These Times for co-sponsoring the webinar. Thank you again to NLNC for putting all of this together. Look for coverage of this event on the In These Times website to be posted soon. You will be receiving a follow-up email if you registered to this event with a link to the recording. And so please share that with your friends, family, and on social media so that we can get this important discussion distributed as widely as possible. And thank you to the staff who put this on, the logistical support needed to connect people who are in 3 or 4 different countries. Thank you so much. And with that, I want to close with just a simple solidarity forever.